Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stefan Spencer, and today it is my distinct pleasure to invite Brendan Kane on this podcast. And Brendan is an outside-of-the-box thinker, speaker, and author who empowers brands to scale by helping them stand out and beat competition in crowded and oversaturated markets. He's the author of the international best-selling book, 1 Million Followers, which I have right here, and the newly released Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World, as well as the founder and CEO of the Hook Point Agency. Brendan has worked with hundreds of individuals and brands, providing business and digital strategy for more than 15 years, including MTV, Taylor Swift, Rihanna, and many others. Brendan, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to connect with you and everybody that's listening to this.
Awesome. So why do you think there needs to be a separate book from 1 Million Followers to talk specifically about the Hook Point? Is there so much to unpack with the Hook Point? And I know the answer, of course, is yes, but tell us a bit more about what inspired you to create a follow-up book on the Hook Point and why that entire story needed to be told.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a number of different reasons of why I decided to write Hook Point. One of which was I was really looking back over the past, 16 or 17 years being in this space and trying to distill down where could I provide the most value. What was the core areas that was allowing me to have a lot of success for my clients and having success working with the people that you named. And I started to see that I was getting known just for social media because of the 1 Million Followers book, because it was doing so well. But when I really reflected back, it wasn't, social media was always kind of a part of what I was doing. I did it since like 2005, back in the Friendster and MySpace days. So I go that far back, but I was doing so much more for the companies and the brands and the clients I was serving. It wasn't just social media strategy. It was really, how do we help them win at any business objective they have? And also for me, having to enter a very competitive world of the entertainment industry, and then secondarily building technology companies at a very early age, I had to find unique ways to really stand out and rise above the noise. And then when I really analyzed of what the world looked like pre-social media to today, is the world has drastically changed. But oftentimes what I'm seeing is with a lot of my clients is their marketing tactics aren't evolving with it. So if we think pre-social media, going back 20 years ago to 2001, maybe there's 1 million content creators on the planet because content distribution was heavily regulated. Like you had to go through a television station, a radio station, a magazine, a newspaper. So the dissemination of content was really limited. Not everybody could get their message to the masses. But we fast forward to today, 20 years later, there's 3.96 billion content creators on the planet. That's how many people are on social media. Now, not everyone is creating content every day, but through those people, there's over 100 billion messages sent out in the world every day. So what that means is for people that are trying to stand out, they're trying to make waves, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're working for a multi-billion-dollar corporation, you're a startup, it's challenging because you're no longer just fighting against your direct competition. You're fighting against the local TikTok influencer down the street, the mother that's creating content for their family circles, the Kim Kardashians, the LeBron Jameses of the world. So it becomes even more important to find unique ways to stand out and grab attention, because without grabbing attention, you get lost in the noise. But we don't just focus on just grabbing attention, then we focus on, well, how do you hold attention? Because grabbing attention with no substance doesn't mean anything. But then relying on kind of the business experience I have, then we figure out how to monetize that attention. Because if we don't monetize the attention, then what really point does it have? So that's really what the next step in evolution of why I wanted to write and release Hook Point, because just generating followers on its own isn't going to do much because of the amount of competition in the marketplace. As you'll see this all the time, accounts have large followings, but they're not getting reach. They're not getting engagement because the algorithms have to prioritize other content to keep people on these platforms longer.
Yeah, and the platforms don't necessarily want to send the visitor, the user off onto a competing platform. So you'll post someone will post a YouTube video link on Twitter and wonder why it's not getting the reach, or post a competing, any website actually as a competitor to the social platform. So any link-based tweet or micro post is a competitor of sorts to that social platform and takes them out of that garden. So we have to think about how to work around those constraints that the algorithm provides.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's highly competitive nature between these platforms. And even, there's rumors now that Instagram is suppressing reach on videos that have the TikTok logo burned in. I think that from my perspective, those are kind of givens. Is like, you don't want to post a YouTube video to Facebook or to TikTok, where really we're focusing with our clients, if they're suffering from low reach or engagement, is really understanding the algorithms and their purpose. People think that these platforms are suppressing reach so that they get you to pay for advertising. That's not the case, because if that was the case, then nobody would go viral. Like it wouldn't happen. Nobody would grow. Really what it comes down to is this fundamental understanding that these social platforms make money in one way, and that's retention of users, session duration, so that they can serve more ads to you. So what they're looking for is content that holds attention for as long as possible. So really, when we're working with clients, there's two core metrics that we're focused on. Is one, what is our view to reach ratio? Meaning a view typically on all those platforms really starts at a 3-second mark, not at the 1-second mark. That changed years ago when advertisers were up in arms about getting charged at 1-second views. They said it didn't show any intent. So we're really looking at the view to reach ratio to determine, well, how well is our content stopping the scroll? Are we earning and winning attention in those first few seconds? And in YouTube, it's different. It's more the suggested video clicks. So we'll look at that click-through rate on the thumbnail and headline. But that's our first indication. Are we winning the attention? And that's because the algorithms see if you're not clicking, you're not stopping the scroll. Well, your content has no chance in holding attention if it can't win the attention, because people are just scrolling or not clicking. And then the second metric really comes down to is, what does our retention graph look like? How long are we able to hold that attention? Because that's the metric that any of these algorithms are really looking for, because the longer you're holding the attention with this piece of content, the longer they're going to stay on the platform. So they'll serve this content to as many people as possible until they hit a saturation point with the audience that they're pushing to, where that retention graph starts to fall off. So that's a lot of the work that we do in this space for people that are struggling to stand out. They're struggling to get their mission out there, their message, whatever they're trying to achieve. If it's falling flat, it's typically because A, they're not grabbing attention. That's where most people are falling flat, because the dynamics have completely shifted on how you do that. And then secondarily, how long are you holding that attention for? And then off the back end of that, where's this attention leading to? How does it play to the overall business growth and goals of the business?
And these two metrics, the view to reach ratio and the retention graph, are those easily extracted out of whatever the social platforms analytics is, whether it's YouTube analytics, Twitter analytics, Pinterest analytics, et cetera? Or is that something that you need a special Google Data Studio dashboard template and so forth?
Yeah, it's a great question. You don't need any additional technology for it, but each analytics is a bit different. So Facebook is the easiest to pull that. Instagram's getting a little bit easier. With YouTube, again, we're looking at not that view to reach ratio, we're looking at that CTR. Like, most people are focused on SEO for driving views, which SEO does work, don't get me wrong, but the real viral wins come from suggested videos. And that's really playing off that click-through rate on the thumbnail and headline. So instead of the view to reach ratio, we're first looking at that click-through percentage, and then correlatively after that, we're looking at, well, what does the retention graph look like? What is that showing us? So each platform is a little bit different, but you do not need to go out and buy a fancy analytics platform. You just use the raw analytics that each of these platforms gives us to understand, are you stopping the scroll? Are you earning the click? Are you just grabbing the attention at a high level? And then what type of retention metrics can you get to show you how long you're holding that attention for?
So do you have multiple hook points in, let's say, a 5 minute long video, or is it just that first hook point that happens in the first 3 seconds, gets them really drawn in, and then you have to hold their attention by just continually providing great content, but no further hook points are needed?
Yeah, so there's dynamics to storytelling. So the first and most important hook point is the thing that leads you into the piece of content. Now, through the storytelling, depending on the length of the video, there has to be a flow, there has to be dynamics to how you're delivering that message. So one of the tools that the most successful YouTubers in the world use is called Jenga effect. So we've all played the game Jenga, where you have the blocks on the table, and with each block that you pull out, it increases the chances of the pile of blocks falling over. So in playing Jenga, you know what the end outcome is. It's going to fall. Somebody's going to pull the last block and it's going to collapse. Well, that means that with each block that's pulled, the tension is rising. The tension is building. So that's where the greatest YouTubers in the world, they'll start with a powerful hook, and they keep building the attention to the outcome that you know. So to give you an example, there's a YouTuber, Graham Stephan, a young kid that talks about finance. He's made finance sexy. And like one of his most viral videos is how he got a Tesla for $76. So right there, it's a great hook. And comparing it to Jenga, you know what the video is about. Now, if you watch that video, he doesn't reveal the math of how he actually did it until about 9 minutes in. And it's not like he's filling it with fluff to get to that point and build that retention. He's telling a story throughout that. You know, he's building tension. There's ups and downs and things like that. Mr. Beast, probably one of the most prolific YouTubers in the world today, he does the same thing. He has, you know, the person to make this shot wins $300,000. So again, strong hook, you know what the outcome is, but it's not like in the first 3 seconds the person makes a shot and the video is done. He wouldn't have success. You see the same thing in movies. We've all seen movies. Is we typically know what the outcome is, like Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise is going to beat the bad guy, but there's ebbs and flows to what's going on. You know, he gets captured, he gets released, he gets captured again, he's running after the bad guy. There's tension, release, tension, release. So that's how we kind of typically look at it. And, you know, sometimes those could be hooks, sometimes those can just be storytelling techniques as well.
So what would be an example in your own marketing of tension, release, tension, release?
Yeah, so we do this a lot in our books. You know, we set up different problems and then give a solution, and then we set up a new problem and go to the solution. Or in our business, you know, when we're working with clients, you know, we spend a great deal of time of understanding what their challenges are, what their goals are, what their competition is doing. And we really clearly define all of the various problems. Now, most clients will come to us with a single problem. They're like, oh, I want more followers, or I want more revenue. But they don't understand that within those, there's several problems that have to be solved in order for the client to ultimately be successful.
So in your books, are you maybe ending the chapters on cliffhangers sort of thing? I know it's harder to do when it's a nonfiction book. Dan Brown is amazing at this with his fiction books. I don't know if you've ever read the Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons. You just can't put it down because every single chapter is addicting. At the end, you just are left on this cliffhanger and you have to keep binging. It's like you do an all-nighter reading those books. It's really fun.
Yeah, we typically, like if you look at the Hook Point book, and that's a perfect example of each chapter title is a hook point in and of itself. So that's where we kind of build that interest of moving on and moving on. We spend a great deal of time, you know, designing those chapter titles to grab that attention to continue on with the book. Because, you know, as you know, in writing a successful book, a lot of people will buy books, myself included, and will either just read a portion of it or they won't read it at all. So it's like, yes, your job as a writer is to create that hook point to get them to buy the book, but it's also to make sure that you're setting up a compelling story that they actually dive in and read the book. And then also when they're in the midst of reading that book, finding ways to make sure that you're maintaining that attention to keep going from section to section or chapter to chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of my 1,000-page book, The Art of SEO. I don't know that many people who read the book cover to cover. It is a bit daunting and overwhelming, really. It's like, it's more of a reference book, I guess, although it really should be read cover to cover. But here's the problem is, what half of SEO do I leave out, or my co-authors leave out, in order to get it under 500 pages so that it sells more copies and gets consumed more? There's a lot to unpack. And so
Absolutely.
you got to somehow keep the reader's interest throughout. And yeah, it's not easy.
No, it's not. And that's where, like, understanding, I worked with the professor at Stanford, BJ Fogg, that created the Persuasive Technology Lab, and he talks a lot about motivation and ability as being a trade-off. Is understanding what the actual motivation of the end consumer that you're selling something to or putting content in front of, and then you design the ability around that. So the more motivated somebody is for studying SEO or social media or hook points or marketing in general, the more likely they are to read an entire book. But if you don't set up that motivation properly and articulate, well, what is the outcome for this person if they read that book? What is the problem that this book is solving? If it's not a deep enough problem, if it's not contextualized in the right way, then ultimately it leads to either them not buying the book or them buying the book and not reading it, or not reading the whole thing. So that's another layer of kind of psychology that we apply to marketing, is really understanding where we're meeting the consumer, what their state of mind currently is at, and how effectively can we change that state of mind to get them to perform a specific action. This is why you've seen a lot in the info product space or just in lead gen, why people started doing free ebooks or free email generators, because the motivation isn't strong enough yet to warrant getting somebody to pull out a credit card. Versus if the motivation is set up properly, then what can happen is you can make somebody do something difficult, like pay with a credit card or pay a premium. Like, one of the perfect analogies of an industry that's completely built on this is the health club industry. What do they do? Where do they make most of their money? New Year's resolutions, because there's a high state of motivation that they know happens with people saying, I'm going to get in shape this year. I'm going to get healthy. So that's where they make most of their signups, because it's a difficult thing to get somebody to drive to a gym, sign up for a membership, and they typically lock you into a commitment. And because they know most of these people are going to show up at the gym the first day, overwork themselves, be super sore the next day, or hurt themselves and just not want to come back.
Yeah, that brings up a good point about gym memberships, and that I learned this actually from Travis Ketchum, the founder of Contest Domination. And here's a great example involving gyms in terms of setting up a contest that has the potential to go viral. And that is if the prize is related to the motivation and to the main offer. So in that case, you wouldn't want to give away, let's say, a gift card to Barnes & Noble or Amazon or something, because that's for anybody and everybody. But if you give away a gym membership as the grand prize, that's only people who are interested in getting into shape. And then you give to everybody who didn't win, which would be almost everyone, 1, 2, or 3 winners, and then everybody else is sorry you didn't win. You change the model to something where it's like you're going to get, everybody's a winner, but you're going to get something that gets you on that journey, like give them some results in advance, like Frank Kern with his idea of teach the F chord to the person who wants to learn the guitar. Teach them that for free, get them hooked, and then they want to buy the entire course. So get them into the contest wanting the thing that is aligned with what you have to offer, not just like money or just some bribery, and then make everybody a winner. So I really like that approach.
Yeah, there's definitely different ways to look at it, and one of the interesting analogies that popped into my head was the lottery system. Yeah. People, it's when you think about it, it seems baffling. Is like, we all know we're not going to win the lottery, but why do so many people still buy lottery tickets? Well, it's because the prize is so big, and this is where the lottery is so smart with marketing, is that you just keep seeing the prize raise, and the mindset, both consciously and subconsciously, is like, listen, I'm probably not going to win the next $1 billion lottery, but it's only $5. It's only $10. So it's like the motivation and ability there are interesting. There's enough motivation to say, well, I'm not likely going to win, but if I do win, I'm going to win $1 billion. So the ability of throwing down $5 or $10 or whatever it is kind of justifies that action to take place.
Yeah. Where do you see that behavior in a more kind of virtuous setting, right? So I consider playing the lottery gambling.
is Omaze.
Okay.
Omaze has done an amazing job with the lottery model of tying a big prize to a charitable cause. So, they work with celebrities a lot, where it's, hey, have lunch with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck for a water charity. And the more entries that you buy, the increased likelihood that you're going to have that happen. Same lottery principles, but it's being tied to a charitable cause and donation.
Do you know Scott at Charity Water?
I do not know Scott. No.
Okay. He is an inspiring guy. He's on my list of people to have on the show. He has really cracked the code for how to take a charity that's doing something pretty mundane or boring, of installing wells in villages, and making it sexy and even viral. It's really, really impressive.
The reason is because he tells compelling stories.
He does.
Turns it into story. It's not about in all of the marketing that they do. It's not about the cause. It's not about the water. It's about the people.
Yeah, it's also about him too, and his going to the brink, basically, of self-destruction, and then finding his why, and just a huge, beautiful transformation in him personally that then spills over to helping the world.
Yeah,
it's a compelling story. Do you have kind of compelling or powerful origin story yourself that you want to share?
Well, I mean, the place that I started is I wanted to be a film producer. And so I went to film school to hopefully learn the business side of film. And when I showed up, I quickly realized they teach you nothing about business there. So I figured, well, I've got to figure out what it is to create a business, manage a business, run a business, the fundamentals of it. So I started a few internet companies, going to school and going to college to really learn and experiment. And then when I showed up to Los Angeles in 2005 to pursue a career in film, I started at the bottom, making coffees and copies and all of that, like everybody else. And when people would ask me, well, why did you move to LA? Why are you working here? And I said, well, I want to be a film producer. I could just see everybody's eyes glaze over, just like you're one of a million people. So I had to find a way to stand out. I had to find my hook point. And I took a step back and just realized that whenever we finished a movie, we would spend tens of millions of dollars on a single piece of content. And then we needed hundreds of millions of people around the world to know about this piece of content in months. Otherwise, we lose a tremendous amount of money and risk going out of business, or risk not generating a profit and incurring a huge loss. So I basically just realized those situations when that tension rose and just said, listen, I have this experience in this, in digital traffic and this new form of social networking that's coming out, and blogs and websites. I can help you tap into that traffic for either no cost or nominal cost compared to what we're paying on television and print. And that's what really allowed me to go from making coffee and copies to starting a digital division for the first studio I worked for. And then from there, I just kind of quickly realized that the movie industry is just another corporation. People think it's so sexy and creative and fun, but it's a corporate environment. And, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I don't know that I really realized it at the time. So I left and started building technology platforms and licensing them back to big media companies. And that really took me on this journey of understanding how to grow things. The blessing and the curse of starting in the movie industry is you're forced to think big. Like, you cannot go in with an idea that talks about reaching 10,000, 100,000, or even a million people. You get fired. So the blessing of starting in that environment is it forces you to think big, but that provides, challenges, to always be in a space where people are coming to you to achieve massive goals. That's what I love to do. But at the same time, it puts an immense amount of pressure because we're not going into the market trying to solve incremental problems. We're trying to solve huge problems and reach huge goals. So that pressure, I think, can often pose challenges. So a huge part of how I spend my time is understanding human behavior and psychology so that I can better understand how to communicate and connect with consumers at scale, but also how to better understand myself. What does it mean to be a human being on this planet? What does it mean to suffer from depression or self-doubt or panic attacks and things like that?
Did you have that issue?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a period of my time when I was running a startup where I had a panic attack every 15 minutes for 2 days straight.
Wow.
So there's a lot of, suffered from depression and all of those things in my journey.
Was there a gift that you see in that now?
Well, 100%. There's, I think, a gift in everything that we experience in life. It's just a matter of whether we see it that way, because we all, as individuals, have challenges. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is happy all the time. Like, somebody was telling me a story about like the Zen Buddhist monks that meditate for 8 hours a day. And the reason that they meditate for 8 hours a day is because they have to deal with the craziness of the world. So for me, it's understanding that it's a learning experience, and I'm meant to go through that to learn and take something from it on the other side. Am I saying by all means that it's easy and I enjoy it? No, I don't enjoy it a lot. Like, I've spent the last year really diving into free diving and understanding free diving to rewire the brain, and breath holds and breath works. And there was this period of 6 months where I put myself in a state of panic every day to understand what it means. And I still sometimes, when I'm training with breath holds or training in a pool and things like that, that it'll pop up. And is it fun? No, it's the worst feeling in the world. If you've ever had a panic attack, you know it. But I think there's just a tremendous amount of learning about yourself, learning about how you perceive situations that can come from it instead of running from it.
Right. And when you have a panic attack, a lot of times you don't recognize that it's a panic attack, right?
For me, I'm pretty good with it. For me, it's such an intense feeling that I know that it's a panic attack. Like, you feel like you're dying, basically. So at least for me, and like I can only talk about from my experience, there's a very clear delineation between anxiety or even intense anxiety and a panic attack.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that when I had a panic attack and I went to the doctor fearful that I really was on my way out, and he's like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're having a panic attack. I'm like, I had no idea.
You're correct. In those first times of having it, you don't know what it is. I think I've forgotten the first time because I've had so many, and now I'm kind of in this process of basically manufacturing it to understand it and to work through it. So
you do free diving pretty regularly, I guess. I know this is maybe a little bit off topic, but I think it's important for us to explore a little bit. Is this idea of using breath holds as a way to process your negative traumas or feelings or experiences, and to then get out the other side. And so if you can do, let's say, a Wim Hof breathing exercise every day, and then do free diving once a week or every couple of weeks, like, give me a sense for how often you're doing this. I did, for example, a Wim Hof breathing exercise with some of my brothers at Metal, which is how I met you. They do it every day, and I try to join every day, but miss about half the time. But a few hours ago I was doing it, and it's amazing. It really helps boost the immune system, and it gives you this sense of grounding and calm. And I'm sure there's tons of other benefits, but yeah, could you kind of walk us through a little bit of your process and your kind of daily routine in regards to addressing your physical, mental, and emotional health this way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done the Wim Hof breathing. This is a bit different in that really what you're doing is you're putting yourself into breath holds. You're not breathing, whereas Wim Hof is, you're just focusing on the breath. So I do at least once, sometimes twice, a series of breath holds at about 16 minutes every day, and then I have a regimen that I work out in the pool, a freediving exercise 3 days a week. That's between an hour and 15, an hour and a half. They typically say you don't want to go more than 3 times in that because there's diminishing returns of that. But really what you have to learn when you're holding your breath, especially in freediving, is you have to relax yourself. You cannot freak out in the water because that panic will lead to a loss of control. Like, so the individual that I've been learning it from is a professional freediver, and he's based out of Mexico, and he'll take me in cave dives. And like when you're diving in a cave or diving out down deep, like you have to relax yourself, because if you panic in that situation, there's dire consequences. Like you can die, you can drown. So there's an interesting mind game that happens that your mind initially wants to freak out when it's holding its breath. It's like, you need to breathe. You're going to die if you don't breathe. And understanding the delineation between the mind and the body, because the body theoretically doesn't need to breathe for 15 minutes and can still survive. Now, am I holding my breath for 15 minutes? No, I'm not at that level. But you have to learn where this panic, this anxiety comes from, and really calm yourself to be able to go into those situations successfully.
Interesting. So when I do the Wim Hof breathing, I hold my breath for 60 seconds, and then for 90, and then for 120, and then for 150 seconds. I don't think I've tried for longer than the 2.5 minutes, which for me was amazing to be able to hold my breath without freaking out or feeling like I'm out of air or anything for 2.5 minutes. It was that felt really like a big accomplishment for me, and now I do it most days, and I'm sure it's good for me. But it sounds like what you're doing is a whole other level. And
so the difference in the Wim Hof versus the breath, on land is we use a progression of bandhas. So what that means is basically you push your stomach in during the breath hold. So one is pushing your stomach in, and then you hold that, and then you breathe out, and then you don't breathe in, and then you push your stomach up. And what that does in that is it really intensifies the breath hold to the period where it really forces this anxiety or whatever to rise. And then again, in the water, it's just like a whole different ball game than being on land, because you can't just come up, for that air. You have to kind of go through it. So yeah, I mean, it's just so fascinating. There's so many different facets and forms of breath work, and I think it's just finding the one that's the right fit for you, because I think everybody's different in terms of what they're working on or what they're looking to achieve.
Yeah. And this is fascinating. I appreciate taking this little detour. One last quick question on this topic. Have you read the book Breath by James
I haven't read the book, but I've definitely listened to the interviews with James Nestor and understand the core philosophies and principles that are expressed in it.
Yeah, great guy too. He's just a solid human being. All right, so let's get back to the whole storytelling angle. What would be an example of a great story from somebody that's a client who you wouldn't have expected this kind of story to come from? Somebody who might think is really boring, maybe an accountant or I don't know, somebody that doesn't strike you as being a great storyteller.
Yeah, I think it's less about people being ineffective storytellers and more about pulling the story out of them. So, for example, there was a dentist that we were working with, and we were working with her to identify her hook points, and and just talking to her, she was just sharing a lot of data, and it's kind of similar to James Nestor and some of the data around breathing, in that at early childhood, if you don't address cavities or you don't take good care of the mouth, it can lead to chronic illness and disease later in life. And most of the chronic diseases that are impacting adults are stemming from the fact that they're not taking care of their mouth, their cavity, their teeth at an early age. So in terms of reconstructing it, she was going out on trying to talk about cavities where her current clientele was really parents. And when a parent hears about cavities, you kind of glaze over. It's like, oh, cavity, you just get it filled. But we recontextualize it to tell a much more powerful story, in that, the number one chronic disease that's going to impact your child in the short term and the long term that could result to significant illness and potentially death is starting in the mouth. And once you tell a parent that, they're going to open up their eyes and listen more closely to what you have to say. But if you start with, I'm a specialist, I'm the leading specialist in cavities, we've all heard of cavities and we don't even give it a second thought because it's so oversaturated and we just think it's a simple solution. So it's a great question because anything could be made interesting. Any topic. Like, there is a YouTube account called Clear Tax Value, where it's just a guy behind a desk. I think they're over 1 million subscribers, getting hundreds of thousands of views, and he's talking about taxes. Because what he did so brilliantly is during COVID, he started anchoring his content around stimulus checks and what's happening with the government and things like that. There's a doctor called Dr. Mike, who is now one of the probably most popular doctors in the world. I think he's over like 7 million subscribers on YouTube. And what he did is he anchored his expertise around pop culture. So like his two most popular videos is Real Doctor Reacts to Grey's Anatomy. Real Doctor Reacts to The Good Doctor. So what we talk a lot about is how do you make what you do accessible to the general audience? And it's kind of counterintuitive to what most people have said in marketing in the past is you have to be super niche and target down to a specific message to a specific individual. And yes, there's some instances when you can leverage that for paid and still be successful. But our success comes from, well, how can we make this subject matter interesting to the general audience, to the widest audience possible, so that you can play to the algorithms and even play to the auctions of what they're looking for. Is like, when we put this in front of people, what are they doing? Are they scrolling past it? Are they ignoring it? Or are they engaging with it? Are they watching it for a long period of time? Are they clicking on it? Because whether you're doing paid or organic, the more that you master that, the better that your ultimate results are. And that's how, my team has, generated over 50 billion views across platforms and over 100 million followers and over $1 billion in revenue for our clients, is because we're approaching it from this generalist idea. There's another example, a guy named Ryan Serhant that a lot of people probably have heard of. He's one of the top real estate agents in the world. And he started on the $1 million listing show, but then he started to dive into social. And, he did an amazing job where he would start taking people on tours of $100 million mansions or a $7 million closet or a private island, not from the standpoint of like, let me show you and sell you this property, but let me show you into my world as an exclusive real estate agent to the world. And by doing that, he plays to what the general audience wants, generates millions and millions of views on these videos, because even the person that can't afford it, they want to see what a $7 million closet looks like. They want to see what a $100 million mansion looks like. But because he's playing to that, the algorithms are seeing that click through on the thumbnail and headline and the retention graph of holding that attention, that they keep pushing it to millions and millions of people. So out of 5 million people viewing a video, there may be one person in that has the money to afford it. And he has even said that he's had people buy 10, 20, $30 million properties just by seeing a YouTube video. So that's where, making something that you don't think is sexy into something that's sexy can really pay dividends in building a huge brand, beating out the competition.
So when you were talking earlier about monetizing the attention as an important aspect of the equation, and I love that example that you just gave of the real estate agent. If we go back to the example of the doctor, real doctor reacts to the good doctor or to Grey's Anatomy, how would he, or how does he monetize the attention there? Is it again just one person out of a million would be a good fit and would contact him and become a client or patient, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'm not entrenched in his business, but this is what I would project that his business looks like. He earns a decent amount of money off of ad revenue, off of YouTube, speaking fees, probably books, and then he probably has a private practice as well. So I think it's, a diversification of the revenue for somebody like that. The clear tax value guy, again, it's ad revenue, but I think more for him, he's probably attracting a lot of clients that want to work with his consultancy. And then for him, he could even potentially create an app or an interface to work with clients at scale. So that's where it's like when we're working with clients, we take that into consideration and really craft the back end of that based upon where they want to be, what their resources are, and what their business is. Like once you have the attention and you hold it, there's so many opportunities on the way that you can monetize that. And it's different from case to case based upon where the person really wants to take their business.
Gotcha. Now, with you being an author and having 2 successful books, I would imagine you've really dialed in the right approach to doing a book launch. You got the book launch funnel and all the different ways to reach the influencers and create hook points and all that. Could you kind of break down your launch approach and funnel for us in regards to your newest book, Hook Point?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't really do anything when it comes to launches. I'm more interested in how I can build this into a sustainable and long-term business. Like I see books as a business in order to be really successful, because the reality of the situation, there's 1.7 million books between self-published and published books put into the world every year. And talking with my literary agent who's represented over $5 billion worth of book sales, he says, like, listen, to have a shot of your book being successful, you got to get 25, 30,000 copies into the marketplace at a minimum for it to kind of take off and for word of mouth. Now, the interesting thing is the average self-published book is selling less than 500 copies. The average published book is selling less than 3,500. And the biggest publisher, I think it's Random House, their average book is selling 15,000 copies. So in each of those 3 buckets, you're well below that minimum requirement of 25 to 30,000 copies in the market. So what I really focus on is how do I build a marketing engine that's sustainable over the long term? So 1 million followers, been in the market, I think 3 years maybe. We've rewritten it 3 times. I sell more copies of that book today than when it first launched. I'm not against launch formulas. I know people that are successful with them. It's just not kind of the way that is interesting to me to go about it. I mean, maybe one day I'll dive deeper into the initial launch strategy, but essentially what we do is we create self-liquidating marketing engines that we can seed market books into the market for either at break even, or some months we're profitable, some months we're taking a little bit of a loss, and then we mine all those book buyers to identify people that we can help with our consulting practice. So about 80% of our books are direct to consumer, social media ads to book funnel. But we do advertise on Amazon. We advertise heavily on Amazon as well. It's just direct to consumer. We own that audience. We own that customer data. So it's more effective for us to remarket to them. And my goal is, how do I just push as many copies into the market as possible so that I can get that brand amplification, get the books into as many hands, and hopefully word of mouth takes over, so that self-liquidating model becomes just more and more profitable as we grow it.
Interesting. So with a book that is self-published, the costs are a lot lower, and you can afford to almost give those books away, right? Just cover the cost of shipping and the printing. But when we're talking about a traditional publisher, like for me to acquire a bunch of copies of The Art of SEO, so a lot of printing costs there with 1,000 pages, or almost 1,000. But the publisher isn't going to give it to us at cost. The lowest I can buy the book is...
Well, that's where I've negotiated that.
Oh, okay.
I've negotiated that with publishers, and publishers don't get it at first, but once you show them the numbers, like, listen, we spend upwards $90,000 to $100,000 a month promoting our books every month. My question to a publisher is, how many publishers spend that kind of money marketing books? Nobody does. Like, it's outside of the Russell Brunsons and those people. So it's like, why wouldn't you allow your author to buy it at cost? Or we've kind of moved away from the free shipping and handling and just going to ebook, because just obviously there's a fulfillment cost, even if you're getting the cost at book, but then the customer service, especially when COVID hit, the U.S. Post Office was just dealing with a lot of issues. So it was making it harder to get reliable from a customer service standpoint. But we've worked with clients to renegotiate their deals with publishers by just showing them the overall vision of why we're doing what we're doing. And my first publisher didn't get it in the beginning, and because my literary agent has such a great relationship, they allowed us to do it as a test case, and now we're one of their top 10 best-selling books. So now they kind of see that, and I understand, like, the publishers are operating from an old paradigm and model, but they want to make money. Like, that's why they're in business, and if you can show them a path that this model can make them money, a lot of times they will be open to it.
Gotcha. Oh, very cool. Before we wrap up, I was wondering if you could give an example of something amazing that you did for Taylor Swift or Rihanna.
Yeah, I mean, first off, with Taylor Swift, people don't really realize she's the reason for her success. She built her fan base herself. It wasn't some big record label. She didn't have millions of dollars of marketing behind her. Is she really understood, and this is a huge mistake people make with social media, is she understood social media as a one-to-one platform, not a one-to-many platform. So you'll see people creating videos and say, hey, everybody, welcome to this next video or this. And when you think about social media, you're sitting on your couch, you're sitting on the toilet, you're in an elevator watching it yourself. Who is everybody? There is no everybody. You're not sitting around in a stadium watching social media. And Taylor understood that before anybody else. So early on, she understood the value of taking a photo with a fan, responding to a comment, signing an autograph. And that one-to-one interaction didn't just turn that fan into a fan, it turned it into a brand advocate. Somebody that was now willing to share her music, her message, her concerts with everybody they knew. And because this was happening at a time where social media was really starting, that was taking place where no longer was it just that this individual was speaking to 5 of their friends that they went to school with in person or around the water cooler at work. They are now sharing it with their social media channels. So each one of those interactions could reach 100, 1,000, potentially 10,000 people. And then when Taylor started growing bigger and bigger and bigger, it started to get harder to do those one-to-one interactions because she can't interact with millions of people around the world. So she evolved it to the next level. That's when she started showing up at baby showers, showing up on doorsteps with Christmas gifts, having a sleepover with 13 fans. And she would capture that content, record it, and release it. And what it was doing is that content was going viral because each one of the fans that couldn't be there, they saw both consciously and on a subconscious level, that's me. Yeah. Taylor cares about me. And that's where she evolved it. So that's her brilliance. And one of the things that we worked with her on is we started early on in our days with her official website. And when we first started, the bounce rate was crazy. It was like 94% off the homepage. Average time spent on site was less than 30 seconds. So we built technology and partnered with other technology partners to cultivate that experience of fans interacting with fans so that it could extend that time spent on site and also have that understanding that tailor can't engage with every single one of them. So over the course of 2 years, we took the time spent on site all the way up to like 28 minutes average session duration at one point. And then we also, in building that, we noticed that there was fans very early on. There was about 30 of them that took the time to read and write code to create their own Taylor Swift fan site so they could really demonstrate their love for Taylor. And we thought, well, that's awesome that these fans are doing it, but what about everybody else? What about all the other fans that would love to have their own official Taylor Swift fan site, express themselves in a unique way, but don't want to learn how to take the time to read and write code? So we built an application that could dynamically take any Facebook page with your authorization. You just log into your Facebook account through this landing page, and it would automatically turn your Facebook profile into a custom Taylor Swift fan site for you in less than 60 seconds. So you just had to click a button. You would give us permission to extract your name and your photos, and then we would insert it into 15 different designs you could choose from. But then the secret was that got the fans engaged even further is once it was built, we told them it was built on the same platform that Taylor Swift's site was built on. And that technology, you could dynamically change everything. So you could change navigation, images. It was, at the same time, maybe even before Wix and Squarespace. But we had fans that would literally had never written a single line of code, would go in and delete the whole site and build it from scratch in the way that they wanted to visualize their love for Taylor.
That is so cool. What a great example. And I love Taylor Swift and what she stands for and what she's doing in the world. I saw her documentary on Netflix, Miss Americana. She's a good soul.
Really yeah, she's a good soul, and she's brilliant. People I don't think, give her enough credit for what she has engineered for her success.
Yeah, she is. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. So how do we get our listener, our individual single listener, hello you, to get your book, Hook Point, and also 1 million followers while they're at it if they don't already have it, and to just learn from you and follow you and maybe even work with you?
Yeah, if people are interested in working with me or want to learn more about the work that we do together, I would just go to hookpoint.com, where we have some more information. We have a video breaking down what we do for clients. You can download our deck and schedule a call with us. If you want to get the books are sold anywhere. We obviously have funnels at both. We have book.hookpoint.com and book.1millionfollowers.com. And obviously there you get added bonuses and things like that. But that's the best place to start. You can also direct message me on Instagram as well. I'm at Brendan Kane.
So awesome. Thank you, Brendan, for sharing your wisdom and your insights with us. And everyone have a great week. Get out there and do something just outstanding for your fan base, for your tribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.